to contribute directly in what the people in the country, the people that was our main concern, was developing at that time. So that's the first piece. And it was extremely pleasant. I found Juvenal in this room a while ago. He was very young at that time, and many other people that are among you that devoted their lives, and they are devoting it to this same sense. And they asked me to address an arid topic, but I will do my best. And I would like to share with you a story. The entrepreneur group that every weekend, or almost every weekend, went to Tzitzicuaro, Marabatío, and all that area in Michoacán, among other things, we decided to never support a person individually speaking. We decided that the projects had to be supported to the workers and producers groups that wanted to carry out a certain activity, because at the end, the wealth, the opportunity that was given from one another was allowing for that state to stay with the people. That's a fact, and you know it very well, that in the activity in the land, the fact of someone sharing an experience or certain knowledge would give rise to a mutual enrichment. Nobody loses, everybody wins. And based on that culture, that is what we handle among our own industries. That's how we see our activity. So we decided that we will never support someone individually, but helping producers together so they could be favored. But we should also acknowledge that for those who didn't have the opportunity of keeping touch with the people, we got an extraordinary motivation when we saw the enthusiasm that everyone was paying to these matters. So that was quite motivating. Everything that Sergio Reyes mentioned a while ago, it was happening to us. Maybe not to them, because we were enriched by that participation. And one of our associates, an entrepreneur, Alfredo Grizzly, maybe you remember him, he was involved in a project, and a worker, a producer, told him, "Please, engineer, could you help me in order to fund a project? And so maybe you can get me a farm." And he effectively gave the economic resources that this man wanted. But at that time, there was no assessment, there was no analysis in order to know how the deal was going to be settled. And things didn't go right. So our beloved entrepreneur, Alfredo Krieger, told us, well, this is the only farm that has been funded by an animal, an ox. And he was an animal because he shouldn't have done that, because he didn't have any basis. I would like to tell you that any productive project must assure sustainability. And that is a very spread concept, but there is no point to waste our time. And for that, we must understand that authorities and ourselves should forecast our projects in a sustainability mindset. Otherwise, the efforts have no sense, no future, and these wonderful presentations would be senseless. For me, it is very shocking to see what you are getting from this great amount of presentations and the information that you're being exposed to. And hopefully you will be able to give a perspective to everything that has been said today, because it is a great opportunity. And based on projects that are created by individuals, a project driven by an individual or by a group would change things dramatically. It's about visualizing the situation about that project and what is the enthusiasm that we are providing when we are the people involved. Maybe I am repeating something that you are more familiar with than I, but in these projects we have three main actors. The government entities, could be local, municipal, that at the end of the day are responsible for the task to be met. And when I am mentioning this, I wouldn't like to take the value away from what you are all doing, but I do acknowledge that it is quite different when I am directly involved in a project than when I am just someone learning, participating at some point, but when my involvement is not focused on success, as Mr. Reyes was telling us. And this should also involve the civil society. How many cases have we seen in the country where the people, unfortunately, do not rely importantly on what they are going to get in return, because the person should rely on the benefits, because at the end of the day he's going to be directly benefited. So it's about being aware of getting an advantage which will allow him to realize that his knowledge, his learnings have nuances that have allowed him to do things better. And that benefit is the consequence of what we've always talked about, because we must be aware that the producers, and maybe you've been told this many times, is the architect of his own development. The producer should be aware of what he's doing, analyzing, because everything is in his direct advantage. as long as he knows how to carry out and how to make his best efforts to make it happen. I would say that the government entities should be ready to go with the country people, with the producers, facilitating the activities, but not only in financial terms, which is the line that requires more assistance, probably, in the business plan. And it's even wider than just the financial piece that allows to realize and to envision the project and what is going to achieve. It's not just about a project. It's about something that must be more transcendent, and we should go into the important concept. But maybe it's not a good idea for me to tell you more about this concept because I was not asked to. And probably many of you have this awful temptation. Hello, Mr. Alberto, how are you doing? The terrible, awful temptation in which the government entities still believe in what they call patronizing, where at a certain point, or at least that's how they behave, is to give someone a degree that do not belong to them. And I believe it's bad behavior that we've always had towards our producers because they do not deserve that concept. I believe that in our case, we have learned from you, the people in the field. So we should never do those things and talk about the people in the field that way. We have to carry out our projects. We have to make them successful. Well, and please forgive me, because I didn't bring a PowerPoint presentation with me, but I want to point out that I've been having some health issues, and I've gone through 3 surgeries, but it's been kind of painful for me, and that's why I haven't prepared any PowerPoint presentation. I would like to tell you the institutional objective of our movement to develop the rural industry. And we have Patricio Castelazo to talk about this. We've set forth that we must promote productivity and the human development of people and rural groups in a comprehensive way through subsidizing by means of our institution, the institution that I represent. And promoting is construed as facilitating the improvement of the individual in achieving his goals and contributing with anything that is necessary so he would have an improved positions and the ability to progress. And productivity increase is acknowledged by us as using the optimal use of our scarce resources. That is a social duty, and it's an economic demand as well. More productivity in the field in order to meet the needs of every Mexican involved. And human development is to be aware of the dignity and the value, and that every individual will make use of his or her potentialities, that they will execute their own freedom and the ability to relate to others in order to get mutual help. And in a comprehensive way is about covering simultaneously the productivity and human development, taking into account the individual in his total terms. We may forget this as citizens, as members of family, and also as consumers. Is supporting the growth of the individual and the group without contributing to a divorce, and using a methodology that, along with the funding, a technique and social basic education, we may build a productive project in order to meet the needs, to give hierarchy for carrying everything out. As you probably know, this Mexican Foundation for Rural Development is a specialized institution to activate the rural development, and it was created in 1963. It has a wide experience, its own experience, and it has a board of directors that consists in entrepreneurs. We have 5 parameters that we regularly use, so we may define somehow the reference framework in which we have to move. It was mentioned partially from what I could hear, and we have the concept of sympathy. If you are fine, I am fine. If you are not okay, then I am also affected. It's a very simple definition. And also, we have the concept of subsidizing. We have to understand that within the groups, the individuals grow in understanding and learning. So we may have them participate to carry out the activities little by little, the ones that were unknown to them in the past and they are getting to know, and that right now they definitely need to go forward and getting the chance of doing things by themselves. And this term of subsidizing is the definition, very simple definition. It's like giving the same number of opportunities to the one that is developing based on the learning that he's have, and that will be a permanent piece in his activity. And as an economic activity, he must be efficient. It's part of productivity, and that must be understood by everyone. Because if that doesn't work out, then we will be, unfortunately, in a very bad position. And something very transcendent is to respect nature, because respecting nature is what we receive as heritage and that we cannot waste. We should take advantage of it and improve it in our activities development. Otherwise, we would be totally poor, because in those cases we could have lost the legacy that is borrowed and that we must return so other people could multiply it and get rich from it. Well, as a Mexican foundation, I have some additional concepts, but I believe that time has come for me to say goodbye and to thank you for this opportunity. And I would tell you that you should feel very privileged. I don't know if you have realized about the opportunity in your hands, because not many are having it. I really wish that you will be able to convey this to others, so whatever the number, we could build the country we want, where each one of us will have a better life quality thanks to our efforts. Thank you.
Somehow. First of all, I would like to go along the lines of the things that happen in the rural environment. We are all involved somehow with the rural areas, and we know what state they're in and what their situation is. Referring a bit to statistics and numbers, we're clear that 30% or around 30% of the country's total population lives in rural areas. And what's significant about this, and what is noticeable and worrisome as well, is that 80% of this population lives in extreme poverty. So why is this? Why does this happen? Well, there are many reasons for it. Really, this environment is... Okay, good, we have my presentation. Okay, so this environment is conditioned by many situations, and I think that one of the main topics is the size of rural communities, how their disposition, their geographic disposition, and their level of isolation. If we think of these rural communities that have around 200 inhabitants, and which are hours away from larger towns, or we can understand how come these communities don't have access to transport or communication or health services. It is necessary for us to find the formulas so that these communities may be integrated and may have a possibility to have access to all the services. Another key issue that has incidence on the field is migration. Nowadays, we can see that every community, most communities, not only the small ones, large communities, large towns, are now towns inhabited solely by women, children, and the elder. And it's not that I hold anything against the elder, but that's what's happening